Welcome to the 12th and final lecture for International Regulatory Frameworks for Climate Change and Environmental Management. So in this lecture we're going to review the course and talk about, a review of the lectures we've covered very briefly. Talk about the remaining parts of the course and summary of the final exam. I know that we've got your main focus at the moment is your research paper, rightly so, but I just want to let you know, planning forward the remaining bits of the course. And then I'd like to finish by talking about your future. So let's review what we've covered. So I gave you this handout in the first lecture. I've still got, if anyone is missing handouts, there's still some down the front. So this course has taken you from 1945 and followed all of the major international environmental treaties. So that was the span of the topics across the week. So we started with the Charter of the United Nations. We looked at some of the framework concepts or foundational concepts like sovereignty, what the UN did, how the UN wasn't a global government, it couldn't impose obligations. And then we looked at, why do countries accept obligations? What's the driver? Primarily because there's some problem that they can't solve by themselves and they've got a common interest in working together. So it's often said that that enlightened self-interest is the driver of international environmental law and policy. So enlightened self-interest, yes, countries are self-interested, but not in the way that Donald Trump means with, America first. Self-interest is often not about just blocking out everyone else's needs, but working together collaboratively to solve problems. So enlightened self-interest. We've looked at major treaties. We saw that there wasn't much happening after World War II. There was low concern for the environment. And then in the 60s and 70s, there's this burst of activity with major treaties agreed, the Ramsar Convention, the World Heritage Convention, and the like. And then through that, and building on that foundation, there's an evolution of major international treaties dealing with different topics. So we saw MARPOL 73, 78, UNCLOS, absolutely so important for many countries in control of their fisheries, really a vital component of the international system of governing the oceans. We took a break in the middle and went down to Gondwana, to World Heritage Area, the Gondwana Rainforests of Australia World Heritage Area at Springbrook, and had a lovely walk in that lovely sunny weather with, the breeze was blowing through the trees. Do you remember that? No, there was a lot of rain. It was a bit cold, but it was fun. We got to see the rainforest as it was raining. So it was just about experiencing that beautiful place, because we talk about World Heritage, talk about protecting these things, but you go there and you're struck by the beauty, this is really cool. This is something we want to look after. And then the last couple of days we looked at the Vienna Convention and the tremendous success story that represents for humanity. Tremendous success. Every time you step out in the sun, international environmental regulation is protecting you, and it's going to protect all of your kids, everyone you love, whether they know it or not. It's there. So that's a great success story to keep in mind, when we think particularly about climate change. Looked at the Biodiversity Convention, and yesterday we started looking at UNFCCC, so Climate Change Convention, some of the science, some of the policy issues. Today we've been looking at the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreement, and we know that there's still a lot to be done. There is inadequate response right now. It's a huge challenge. how we deal with climate change. We don't have all the answers. It's going to be hard. So that's brought us up to now, and now we're looking to the future, and we know that there's going to be changes in relation to climate change and the like. Your careers are going to occur in that context, so you're going to be working with this. It's going to affect you. So in terms of themes of the course, I'll just highlight 3. So the first theme is this story of the growth of international environmental regulation, so an understanding the main international environmental treaties and their historical and political context, so a story. I really emphasise that the details, I know you'll forget, and I think that's perfectly fine. What I hope that you'll take away from this course long term is an appreciation that these regimes are important, they affect you, and a basic memory of, yes, this story of these big events like the World Heritage Convention, like a few of the others, so that in your work you can recognise issues and you can go and find the detail if you need to, as long as you've got an overall understanding of the bits of the system. I've also tried to emphasise linking scientific, legal and political knowledge within an environmental policy framework and the politics. So we've emphasised science in some aspects. So we looked at the science for ozone and ozone-depleting substances. We also looked at the science for climate change. I did that deliberately because they're important to understand for understanding the regimes. At the same time, I also wanted to emphasise that science and information isn't enough, that politics is a driver for a lot of our regulatory systems. And the politics is just part of the system. We don't have any choice. There's no utopia we're going to where knowledge and information is going to be what rules the day. It's not the world we live in. We live in a world where Donald Trump gets elected to be US president, where stupid decisions are made and we live with the consequences. Also, we've spent quite a bit of time looking at parts of treaties and looking at their actual text. And what I hope you take away from that is confidence, to think, I can go and look at a treaty, and it looks a bit complicated, but if you spend the time and just read it, particularly understanding things like, the big treaties all have handbooks that give you a lot of detail. So, if you're in your future work, you're dealing with the Ramsar Convention or something, you're working for government, that you have to go and not just look at the treaty, but look at the handbook, and you can get a lot of detail from there. So the same with many, many policy areas, climate change, World Heritage, they all have technical handbooks, and you can get a lot of practical detail there. Okay, so that's our lecture topics, what we've covered. And I said at the start that a complex course like this is a bit like a game of chess, where we're playing together, and I'm hoping that you can take things from this course that will help you in your future. So the lectures are one part of the chess game that we're playing, and hopefully they've been useful for you and interesting. The other parts of the course are the assessment. So the assessment isn't just, from my perspective, it's not about giving you a mark. I've got to give you a mark and a grade at the end of the course, but the assessment is designed to help you learn, and particularly help you learn useful skills around research and policy analysis. So that's what the research paper is about. And the exam is also about helping you to synthesize your knowledge and your understanding, and also critical thinking. So some ideas that I've really tried to emphasize is that this prevailing message that jobs versus environment, that dichotomy is a false one, but you need a powerful narrative to replace it because it's just so pervasive. And what I've proposed is, you can think of it like a tree, where we've got all these outcomes that we want, like jobs, clean air, clean water, and things like good governance and justice and education and protecting the environment. That's all the roots of the tree that allow society to have all these other fruits that we want. And if you kill the roots of the tree, you kill the tree. So good governance and justice, education, the things that this course is very much about, protecting the environment. They're not ends in themselves. They are about providing other outcomes for society, and a good society is a sustainable one. Okay, and we finished in the last lecture by asking the question, well, what will climate policy look like in 2050? I said, I don't know. It's going to be very different from what it is now. I don't know what it will be. No one knows. It's impossible to say how desperate we'll become, and that will drive, societies will do incredible things when they're desperate. So things that are completely politically unacceptable now may well become just, widely accepted. And in that context, though, we shouldn't despair. We need hope. We need to stay hopeful for the future. So we also need to provide positive solutions. It can't be all negative. We have to recognise that dealing with climate change, there's a lot of opportunities there. It's not just a threat. There's huge opportunities. Okay, so in the remaining parts of the course, let's summarise in the lectures. Let's just flip over. I said a bit like a chess game, building up. There's the lectures, but the assessment is also a really important part of, I hope, helping you learn. So in the immediate future, in the next week, I'd like you to present your research proposal, and it's about giving you feedback, making sure you're on the right track. And then, you might go, if you're going home overseas, or, if you're even if you're staying in Brisbane, you've got until after Christmas. So it's about 6 weeks, I think. So the middle of January, your research essay is due. So I'm hoping that by setting a topic early on, that you won't just leave it and rush it at the end, so it's really stressful. I know it's horrible, when you know that there's something you've got to do and keep putting it off, and it just sort of builds up, and it's always this black cloud. I hope this course and the research paper isn't a black cloud that hangs over you through Christmas, and finally it breaks on the 13th of January, and you decide, I've got to do an all-nighter to get this bloody assignment, and I hate Chris, he's a bastard. So, no, I hope that that's not the outcome. I hope that you have a topic that you really like and it's enjoyable, and give yourself a budget, I think, of time. So, if you've got 6 weeks and you're going to devote, let's just say 5 hours a week, 1 day a week, building that up. So over 6 weeks, you've got a total budget of time, and think about how much you can realistically achieve in that time, including writing and editing. So, do it systematically, and hopefully it'll be fun. So the research essay is really about helping you do good research, and also about policy analysis and making recommendations. And I really emphasise many, many times, you're sick of me hearing me say, I'm sure, it's easy to see a problem. It's much harder to come up with a practical solution. And so the practical solutions are a really important part of your research paper, trying to frame recommendations that make sense and that a government isn't already doing, but could adopt. So, something practical that actually makes a difference, really hard to come up with. And that's a really important part of the research paper, and hopefully something that you take away from this course, more than just, the knowledge about international environmental regulation, but evaluation, making good recommendations is a really valuable skill that very few people in the workforce have, relative to, the number of people out there who can, do your basic descriptive work or something, summarise something, but, look at information, come up with some solutions that make sense and are practical. Yeah. Okay, so that's the research essay, and building up your critical thinking, your research skills, your policy analysis, that's what that's about. from my perspective. Then, once the research essay is over, we shift focus to the exam. And the exam has some short answer questions, both undergraduate and postgraduate. There's information sheets on the exam we talked about in lecture 1. I won't go over there again, but lots of information on the Blackboard site. Both undergraduate and postgraduate have some short answer questions, dealing with things like basic knowledge about, say, the UN system, and showing me that you understand that the UN just can't make laws that bind countries, that you understand basic concepts like sovereignty and the like, and the process for creating treaties. So some basic, easy questions. There's also some slightly longer questions dealing with things like trade laws and abilities of countries to restrict trade to protect the environment, things like that. And then there's also some longer essays. So for undergraduates, there's the one long essay that we've talked about, basically describe the evolution of international environmental regulation since 1945. So summarise what we've covered in the course and what's likely to happen in the future. And for postgrads, you also have a component where there'll be 3 articles that I'll let you know later in the semester. One will be the Hansen article from 2008, and there'll be 2 others related to climate policy. And your task will be to critically evaluate them, the arguments in them, and then to basically discuss the implications of them for current climate policies. So they're about critical analysis. So hopefully that will be really fun and challenging for you. To prepare for the end of semester exam, we'll have 2 tutes, one on the 22nd of January, Monday the 22nd, and one on the 29th of January. So the undergraduates, I think I've set aside 2 hours from 9 to 11, and for postgraduates it's 11 to 1 on those days. You don't have to come to them, they'll be recorded. So, wherever you are in the world, you can listen to those tutes. But yeah, in the first one we'll run through the we'll run through the 2015 exam, and then in the second one we'll run through the 2016 exam. So we'll run through 2 past exams in those tutes, and that's to help you prepare for this end of semester exam, which will be very similar to previous exams. Does that make sense? So you've got time to and help to prepare for that. So that's what's remaining. Does anyone have any questions about that or anything? You're always welcome to shoot me an email. So even over the Christmas break, won't be answering around Christmas Day, but shoot me an email if you've got any questions. Happy to chat with you on the phone or by Skype as well. So don't feel that please feel free to contact me if if there's any questions you have. Okay, and yeah, exam I've already covered off. So any questions on that? As I say, we'll cover more on the exam. The exams are all up on the Blackboard side if you wanted to look at any now, but the focus at the moment is on your research papers. Cool. Can we finish then with talking about your future? Career paths, personal leadership and vision. Maybe just, this is, I know when I was an undergraduate, I really struggled with questions about, where to go. And I've suggested to you in environmental policy, it's easy to be disheartened. And I've suggested you can think of your career a bit like a gardener. You've got, you inherit this garden patch which might have a few weeds in it, and hopefully you can tend it, grow some things, and pass it on to someone who comes after you. So gardening is a really nice metaphor for your life. A book that I really found helpful was a book by Stephen Covey, who's passed away now. It was a US book, so it's got a very US title, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But can I tell you a story with it? So Covey, he has 7 habits that he says, but one of them is really, really interesting. It's habit 3, which is begin with the end in mind. And the chapter begins like this. He says, imagine arriving at a funeral. You go up to the funeral parlour and you go in and you see, there's lots of people you know, and you go up and you look in the casket and you're really shocked to see it's you. It's your funeral. You take a seat, you're a bit shaken. And 3 people get up to speak at your funeral. A friend, a family member, and someone from your profession. What do you want them to say? And basically he says, write that down, because those are the goals that you have. And if you want people to be saying that about you when you die, then you need to basically begin with the end in mind. And, if you want your family to say, you were a loving, mother or father, you were always there for them, then you have to be there for them. You can't just, you can't be something else and expect they'll say something else at the end. Anyway, a few years after reading his book, I was at this personal development seminar in Brisbane, and these 2 people were presenting, and they were talking about goal setting, and they said, imagine it's your 60th birthday party. 3 people get up to speak: a friend, a family member, and someone from your profession. And I remember thinking 2 thoughts at the same time. One, I thought, this is outrageous. They're ripping off Stephen Covey's idea, and they're here presenting at a personal goal setting, and they're just such they're stealing his ideas. I felt outraged for Stephen Covey. The second thing I thought, though, was, hang on, if I'm alive, isn't it more important what I think I achieved than what other people think I achieved? So I've used for years this sort of vision statement. So you might want to take out a page and write that down. I'm not going to get you to do it now, but if you do like a square in the middle for me, and then a square for your friends, a square for your family, a square for your profession, and a square for your community, and what you want each one of those of your roles, what you want people to think about you, and also what you want to think about yourself. I find that a really powerful way to, set a vision for, and you might have things that you don't, often you don't. You might say, I'm going to be a fantastic friend, I'm going to be kind and generous, and sometimes you're angry at your friends and you're not kind and you're not generous, okay? Just because you don't reach the goals you set doesn't mean, you didn't reach them, okay, you failed a bit. But by setting them, it at least gives you the sort of compass that actually that's what I'm trying to achieve. So, a goal that you don't achieve but you're trying to is actually still a useful goal. I've found that really useful. And for profession, my professional goal is that I work for nature through environmental law. So basically I see nature as my client, and I go out there and work for it, and I use environmental law, so as a lawyer. So your professional goal will be whatever is really meaningful for you, whether you're a public relations consultant or an environmental manager or an architect or whatever. Doesn't necessarily have to be related to saving the world, but whatever your professional goal is, put it down. And it's really useful in making choices about where you go in your career, because there's lots of stepping stones that you go through and choices that you make. And I find that a really useful. So I find Covey's book really useful, and that sort of vision statement also really useful, because it's easy to lose heart, lose direction, and you don't want to burn out. So having a clear idea about what you're trying to achieve is really valuable. What do you guys think of that? Does anyone have a different approach to goal setting? Or think that there is a different component there? So there's 5 sort of roles there, which are intended to be generic. Covey had friend, family, profession, and someone from your community. I might have only said 3 people got up to speak. There's actually 4 people in the book. and the people that spoke also had 4 people at the 60th anniversary. So the 4 people are a friend, a family member, someone from your profession, and someone from your community. And he says that they're, your four major roles. Anyone else got something that you really like? Okay, well there are some ideas anyway. I think begin with the end in mind, work steadily. The fact that you're here, you're doing undergraduate, postgraduate work. You're already showing your tenacity, your ability to work steadily towards goals. So your careers, you can do that. And the question is what your goals will be. What are you going to work steadily towards from this point? And I think it's also important that you take time out, because it's easy to burn out. So I really like to go to wild places and go bushwalking for a week or 2. So this is down in southwest Tasmania, above a lake called Lake Oberon. Fantastic places that I find really useful to recharge. It is really common, particularly in the conservation sector, to see people come in, work really hard for a few years, and then they burn out. And they go off and do a different job that pays them better because they don't feel like they're making progress. So it's really important that we talk about sustainable development. Well, you have to be sustainable for you. So often it's important that, you have a job during the week, but then you switch off on the weekend and go and have fun with your friends, go to the beach, hang out with your family, go to a movie, take time out for you. You're valuable, and you being sustainable is really important. So that's what I find valuable. So take time out for yourself. Yeah, and the people you love. So this is my little girl, Isabel. Okay, so wrapping up. We've looked at lectures 1 to 11. We've thought about the remaining parts of the course, the research paper, the exam. Talked a little bit about your future. Hope this course is really useful for you for your future. I'd love to hear from you in the future, with whatever you're doing. So this was really nice to hear from Karen when she went back to the Philippines and, sent me this lovely photo saying, hey Chris, here I'm at looking at this Ramsar wetland that I looked at in your course. It's really nice. So so if you go off and do some great job, love to hear from you, and I can talk to future students about this fantastic student I had in 2017. She was great, and she's gone off and look at this fantastic stuff they're doing now. So and stepping back out, this beautiful planet that we've got, there is no other place where we're going to be. This is it. We've got to look after it. And have you guys seen this image? Do you know what it is? That little speck. This is from what was it? The mission. There's a whatever the exploring thing that was sent out like a decade ago out into deep space. Before it left, was it the solar system? It turned its camera around and took a picture of our planet, like way, way, way in the distance, and sent it back. So that little, looks like a little speck of dust in a moonbeam is actually the Earth from right out in space. So that little speck is where all of humanity has ever existed, and for all we know, it's where humanity is going to exist until we are extinct. So that little speck of dust, amazing. We've got to look after it.